So my talk is on what is truth. And I want to start with a couple questions for you to consider. First of all, why do we argue about things like politics and religion and morality and philosophy? Why do we argue? Second question is, well, we have this Time magazine cover from, I think it was 2017, Is Truth Dead? And when this came out, I was wondering, yeah, maybe truth is dead. But I've been thinking lately that truth is making a comeback. So I want you to think about this question. Is truth making a comeback? We talk about my truth and your truth and true for me and true for you. And sometimes in class I call this little t true. But recently I have observed an uptick in the concern for big T true, which is not just true for me, but true for everybody. Now, what's my evidence in this suspicion that there's truth is making a comeback? My evidence is things like this. We're concerned about, very concerned about, fake news, clickbait, catfishing, gaslighting, fake statistics, false advertising, the use of informal fallacies instead of a real argument, deceiving politicians, religious phonies, and a general lack of integrity. These things seem to make us angry. Why is that? If these things are making us angry, it must be because they're falsehoods. And in order to have falsehoods, we have to have truth, right? So think about that. Is that true? But what is truth? Let me start with some philosophical theories of truth. This is where you start in philosophy. What have other people said? So I'm going to do it historically. And I think there's something to each of these that we should hold on to in considering our own theory of truth. How are we going to develop a theory of truth? So the ancient philosophers, the first philosophers, thought that truth was aletheia. This is a great word. Aletheia is a Greek word for truth, and it means disclosure or unclosedness or unconcealedness. Its literal meaning is the state of not being hidden, the state of being evident. It also means factuality or reality. So think about that. Truth is not hidden. It's factuality. It's reality. Okay, that's the first theory of truth. I think there's something worth holding on to there, the connection between truth and reality. And as we go through the history of philosophy, the next theory that comes along is a Christian theory of truth where the truth is the word, or the word is truth. And there's something to hold on to here too, the connection between words, or the logos, and truth. I'll come back to this connection between words and truth in a little while. And as we go through the history of philosophy, in the modern period, which starts around 1650 with Descartes and goes until about 1900, the dominant theory of truth is called the Correspondence Theory. And the Correspondence Theory is what we usually use, where truth in our words is what corresponds to reality. So what I say, if it's true, corresponds to reality. And there's something to that, but as I was thinking about this concept, I wasn't super satisfied because some of the objections people bring up later aren't covered by this theory. And so as we move on in history, we come to the postmodern period, or post-Nietzschean period, as I like to call it, after Nietzsche. What does truth look like after Nietzsche? We're living in that period now. After 1900, what does truth look like? So philosophical theories, there's three different ones. One is called coherence. And the coherence theory of truth says truth is where a system of beliefs is internally consistent and there are no contradictions. This is something like a narrative, a story that holds together. The problem with this, though, is that there can be many competing claims to truth because there are many competing coherent systems. For example, Hinduism is a coherent system, and material monism is a coherent system, but these two systems contradict each other. So how do we really know which one to go with? Post-Nietzschean theories assume we can't know. So we have to just pick one. But how do we pick one? Another theory in this post-Nietzschean period is called Perspectivalism. And this is where you get the idea of a perspective. Truth is your perspective. So truth becomes my perspective and your perspective, and those may clash. And the problem with this is that if truth is only how I see things, then what happens when we don't see eye to eye? How do we work together? So I'm not super satisfied with the perspectivalist theory of truth. And then, because this is the result, there's another theory called the pragmatist theory of truth. This is very popular now too. The pragmatist theory of truth says truth is what brings about good results. Okay, so whatever brings about good results, that's true. But how do we know what a good result is? We have to make a judgment still about good results. So I'm not sure. This seems like people who have given up on truth. This is like, well, we're at the end of the road. We just have to do something. So let's do what works, right? But what works also has assumptions. So I think we can take something from each of these theories and start looking at some of the characteristics of truth. And let's think about things like a popular use of the word, like we want to speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the court of law. What is that about, right? So I'm going to give you some things to think about that I spent a long time thinking about, and I could be wrong, so I would like the truth. So if you see I'm off, then you should bring it up so that I can get closer to the truth. See, I'm trying to demonstrate how this works. So you read these things and you go, yes, I can see that, but they're missing this. So we want to get at the truth of the matter in philosophy. All right, so consider the following about truth. Truth is revealed. Remember aletheia? It's undisclosedness. So truth is revealed. And it's the state of not being hidden. So if it's not hidden, then it's clear. So truth is clear. Now think about this. If truth is revealed, think about just on the witness stand. You're asking the witness to reveal what they saw, right? They have to speak it. So truth is spoken, and if it's spoken, there's a speaker, there's an author, and there is something that's being communicated, a truth. And so there's a necessary connection between a thinker and what is spoken, right? So truth is mediated, it's revealed, and it's revealed by words. And this is the Greek word logos. And I'm going to make this claim after I've studied a lot that logos, or the word, is the vehicle of truth. The word is the vehicle of truth. It's how I can communicate what's in my mind to your mind through words, right? So truth is mediated. And this is something the philosopher Kant was troubled by. He thought that we could never get to the thing in itself in the world. And this is probably why some people doubt the correspondence theory of truth, because our minds necessarily are mediated by interpretation of the world. So we never get to the thing directly. It's always through interpretation. But that shouldn't hold us back. That's kind of the exciting part. We can test the interpretations for meaning. But this is also where we could fall into error. So truth is contrasted with error or falsehood, right? Always in the literature, when you're reading about truth in philosophy, they're trying to figure out, well, then how do we account for error? How does it happen? And it happens in a lot of different ways. So I'm going to try to show you what truth has going for it and where we could make mistakes. So the first thing is we could misinterpret reality. We could misinterpret what people are saying. So interpretation is work. And this is what philosophy is about, and this is what Socrates was after. You use this word, justice. What does that mean? And then they give him an answer, and he tests it, and he goes, that can't make sense. So I just went through the history of philosophy. You say truth is correspondence. What does that mean? Now, that can't capture all of it, so let's try again. So we could interpret and misinterpret. Consider this. Truth is intellectual. What does that mean, right? It has its origin in thinking, in thought. And in logic class, which is here today, we talk about concepts, judgments, and arguments, the forms of all thought, right? So the human intellect is the source or origin of truth in communicating to one another, but it's also the source of error. If we aren't careful, we could not fully form our concepts. We could make false judgments. We can fail to support our judgments with arguments. So I'll talk more about these in a little while, but this is a source of error, big time. Consider this. Truth is received or discovered by reason. This is the tool we have for doing philosophy, for thinking. So this is like a logos in us. There's this capacity in us to understand words out there. Now, this is another source of error too, though. We have this great tool, but if you observe people, observe yourself, we tend to neglect this tool. We don't use it. We don't use it all the way, or we get lazy, slothful maybe. We avoid the use of reason. We resist the use of reason. Sometimes this is where the informal fallacies come in. We don't want to argue. We don't have a good argument, and so we appeal to the feelings or appeal to the will instead. And we deny reason, like Nietzsche does. We say we really can't know, and we stop trying. And this is all in the face of what is clear or unconcealed. So we have the capacity to know, but we don't strive to know sometimes. And we should ask ourselves why. What's the cause of that? Why don't people want to use reason? Consider this. Truth is in the world. This is kind of the deep thing about philosophy. Truth is in the world. And there are things in the world that we're discovering all the time, truths to be discovered. This is what science is after, right? What is the truth about astronomy? What is the truth about biology? What is the truth about psychology? What is the truth about sociology? All these ologies. What's that ology? It's the logos again. It's the study of. It means the world can be studied. And this is what fascinated the first philosophers. They were really excited about this fit between our minds and the world, but they couldn't really explain why it was there. And this is what drove them to consider ultimate reality. They're like, okay, so we can understand the world, we can study the world, but why is it like that? So they're always asking, why is it like that? So truth is in the world, and this is called the formal cause. In philosophy of religion yesterday, we were talking about the four causes. If you were there, this is the formal cause, Aristotle's formal cause. It's the genera. It's the unity of the diversity of a being and beings. This is the law of beings. I often wonder, why are there laws? Not like legal laws, like laws of nature. Why are things orderly? And I also wonder, what are laws? It's like information built into the system. And then we're like information readers. Why is it like that? That's what the philosophers were looking for, an explanation of that. Consider this. Truth is collective and systematic. This is the beauty of education. As systematic, there are more basic and less basic truths. As collective, there are different areas and disciplines that pursue truth. So you're taking a lot of different courses. And all of these disciplines, if we're paying attention, they do connect. We're studying the natural world. We're studying the humanities. We're studying the human in the natural world. And philosophy is asking the why about all of it. How does this all connect? So there are different disciplines that pursue truth in different ways, but we put it together in an education. Truth is historically cumulative and passed on. So we don't have to reinvent it every generation. And this is great. I can only have this conversation with you today because of the work that philosophers have done for the past 2,500 years. And that's passed on to me, and I'm going to pass it on to you, and hope you add a little bit to it and pass it on from there. Right? This is how truth grows and expands, and we save it in the internet, right? Why do we create the internet? Do we want to preserve all that we've learned and pass it on and make it available to everyone? There's something amazing about the internet. Truth is transcultural, transgenerational, and global. So it's not constrained to place and time or gender or race or socioeconomic status. Truth is for everyone. Now, it may be that not everyone has access to it. There are some truths that everyone has access to, just by nature of being a thinking thing in the world. But truth is for everyone. And this is the beauty of it, right? We can share it across space and time. That's why we can study history. Consider this. Truth is grasped by an activity of the mind. It's an activity. Like running is an activity. Thinking is an activity. It's an activity of the understanding. And the Greeks had this really great word for this. It's called sunesis. And sunesis is like connecting the dots. You have this truth, you have this truth, you have this truth, and you connect them to get a big picture. And you see the whole truth. Now, this might blow you away. You might think, no way, we can't have the whole truth. I don't mean like a God's eye view of truth, but you can have a big picture of how things relate and are interrelated. And you can always be growing in that. So some people get nervous thinking, oh, if there's truth, we have to have all of it all at once. And that's just not possible for finite beings. We can only know so many things and grow in them. Consider this. Truth is sought. It doesn't just fall into your mind. You have to do some work. And it's discovered by means of engaging in challenges and responses to those challenges. That's why I'm always asking you, give me a good challenge. This is how philosophy proceeds. You put out an idea. Truth is correspondence. Someone comes up with a counter argument. No, wait, have you considered this thing that correspondence theory doesn't cover? And you go, okay, I'm going to go revise. So if we didn't have challenges, we wouldn't grow in the truth. So challenges are a good thing. We sometimes think, oh my gosh, there's so many of them. I don't know what to do. And oftentimes we're afraid of the challenges because we haven't been equipped with the tools for engaging in them. So philosophy should prepare us for that as well. But truth is sought, and it's gained by means of a great conversation, or a dialogue, a dialogos, exchange of ideas. And if you think about it, I had a great conversation all week with Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. I even had a great conversation with Heidegger. He's really hard to converse with. His ideas are hard. But I read Heidegger and I thought, you know what? This guy has some good things to say about truth, even though I disagree with a lot of other things he says. So how can I have a conversation with dead people? This is a beautiful thing. You know why? Because their ideas are captured in the word that they wrote. And I, through that vehicle of the word, can uncover what they were saying. The truth of what they were saying can be discovered. Isn't that cool? Words are the vehicle of truth. You should learn to read for truth. Do you do that? Look for the truth in the stuff you're reading. What if there isn't any? Then you look for the way to overcome the untruth that you're reading. You respond to the falsehood. Okay, consider this. This is the last part I'm going to ask you to consider as a characteristic of truth. And this is probably the most controversial, and I'm open to thinking otherwise. But some of you know I taunt students with the good. What is the good? Do you know what it is yet? Well, I'm going to tell you what I think about it. What? And then you hate when I tell you, right? Here's what I think about the good. Knowledge of the truth is the highest value. It is the summum bonum. It is the good life for humans. Knowing the truth and the ultimate source of truth is the good for humans. Now, I'm willing to argue over that. We argue about things we think are true, right? I'm willing to argue about that. Okay, now, we can contrast truth with non-truth, or things that aren't true, or things that bother us, like the list I gave you at the beginning of the talk. Truth and taste, matters of taste. These are often contrasted. So I can give you two different examples. One, here's a sentence, my car is in the parking lot. That sentence is either true or false. And correspondence theory, which I tend to lean towards, would say that sentence, my car is in the parking lot, is true if reality is such that the car is actually over there. Okay, so that's true or false. But what if I say onions are evil? This is what I always say, right? And you'll say, no, that's neither true nor false, right? If I don't like onions, it's a matter of taste. And that's not something we want to argue about, right? Mint chocolate chip is better than cookies and cream. That's not something we can resolve, really, because it's not about thinking. It's about feelings or perception. So we have to distinguish between truth and matters of taste. Now, some people want to reduce everything to matters of taste. But if that's true, if everything's just a matter of taste, then we can't say things like fake news is wrong. Because maybe some people just like fake news. That's their truth. Or, what is it? Catfishing. Catfishing is wrong. No, that's just how some people enjoy to do things. They just like doing that. So I kind of think we don't want to say everything is a matter of taste. Because there's nothing left but to go, okay, you like murder, I don't. What gives? That's your matter of taste, right? Okay, truth is also sometimes contrasted with moderate skepticism. So skepticism is the view that we can't know what is clear. We can't get to the truth. Now, moderate skepticism is going to say we can have knowledge of some things, we can know some truths, but ultimate things like whether there's a God or not, or whether there's a good life for humans or not, that's not the kind of thing we can know. So they come short in the pursuit of truth. We could know other things, but not the really big things that the philosophers are looking for. We'll call that moderate skepticism. Nietzsche, one of my favorite conversation partners, said, you guys are being soft. You should go all the way and go for radical skepticism. Because if you're consistent, if you're honest, if you're being truthful to your assumption that we can't know those things, then you really can't know anything else. And so he pushes us to radical skepticism, which says that nothing is clear to reason. Nothing is true, including this sentence, nothing is true. And if that's the case, this leads to nihilism or ultimate meaninglessness. And the result should be silence. If the word is a carrier of truth, and there's no such thing as truth, then words are meaningless and we should stop using them. And then in the end, that's what happened to Nietzsche. He was unproductive the last 10 years of his life because he lived his philosophy. Now, there's a religious version of skepticism. It's called fideism. Fideism declares the truth, but it doesn't argue for the truth. And if you think about the court of law, if you were on the stand and someone asked you to testify to what you've seen, and you say, well, just believe me, that's not going to fly, right? So why does it fly with religion? So this is not being a truthful witness. This is a false witness. Truth is also contrasted with one of my favorite things, semanticide. Do you know what semanticide is? Isn't that a great word? The murder of language. And I think this is what we see a lot of in popular media right now. Just the overuse of words until they don't mean anything anymore. And there are some important words they're using over and over and over again that we don't want to lose the meaning of. So semanticide is the use of words and emptying them of meaning. And it's rooted in logicide. And logicide is the killing of reason, or the killing of the word, or the murder of the carrier of truth, which is bad. I think it's bad for everyone. So be careful. The philosophers are supposed to be the guardians of the meaning of things, the meaning of words. Chinese philosophy has this notion of the rectification of names. We've misused words and it's led to bad things in society. It's our job to reclaim the meaning of those words. So philosophers should be doing that. This is what Socrates was after. You use this word beauty. What does it mean? You're emptying it of meaning when you use it that way. All right. Truth is contrasted with ignorance sometimes. Now there's ignorance that is just naive. You know, we're just naive. We didn't know. But there's sometimes ignorance that is blameworthy, culpable ignorance, where we could have known and we should have known and we didn't know. And so some ignorance is inexcusable, particularly if we're rational beings and our job as humans is to think and think well, and we don't see what is clear to reason, then we're without excuse for that. We should know it. And then here's where the insidious part comes in. Truth is contrasted with lying, right? Where lying is the deliberate hiding of the truth in obscurity. And this seems to be the most obvious case, and we hate this, right? Do you enjoy lying? Do you enjoy it when someone lies to your face? No, right? This is terrible. So these are different things that truth is contrasted with. Taste, skepticism, moderate and radical, fideism, semanticide, ignorance, and lying. Okay? Now, I'm going to get a little bit clearer about truth and philosophy. What do we have to say about truth in philosophy? In my book, Retrieving Knowledge, I talk about philosophy's origins as the search for the logos. And the search for the logos was an explanation of the fit between thoughts or reason here and reality or ontos, being. And they wanted to know, why is there a fit? And how do we explain it? And can nature alone explain it? Or do we need something beyond nature to explain it? So I want to think about that. Do we go with what the first philosophers in their naturalism thought? And guess how that ended? We can't explain it in terms of nature alone. And they ended in skepticism. We really can't know. A radical skepticism. So the next era, the Christian era, tried to address that skepticism. So there's, in the Gospel of John, this begins with this talk about the logos again. And John seems to be replying to the skeptical philosophers in the previous era, and he's trying to explain the logos in a fuller sense. And he says the logos is eternal. There's no beginning or end to it. It's always. Why? Because if there's some eternal being that's always, then that eternal being has to have some explanation and some order, some logos. And there's a logos in us. It's the light of nature. And that's the light by which we understand things, this reason. And the logos is in the world because it was put there in the world. There's order in the world because it was put there. But guess what? Humans didn't see it. And you know what? The philosophers before this also lamented that humans didn't see it. Heraclitus, one of my favorite philosophers, he said, the logos is all around us, but men fail to see it. And they failed to see it because of neglect. And he was really upset about this. So if you look at Raphael's School of Athens painting, it's in my office. Heraclitus is all by himself at the front, and he's kind of brooding. He's sitting here brooding. He's kind of the dark philosopher because he was looking for this thing, and he was super excited about it, but nobody else was. And so that is also part of John's story. And he says, well, this is why humans need to be redeemed. And that's the purpose of Scripture, to talk about redemption. And so the logos comes written in this Christian story. It's written as Scripture. And then, you know what? That's also rejected. So the logos comes again, incarnate, in person. And so this is another alternative view of what is truth and what's the connection between truth and logos. Now, in logic class, we go more basic and we talk about thinking and thinking in terms of concepts, judgments, and arguments. And now we need to think about thinking and communicating. So we do this. This is part of the Socratic dialogue, part of what we do in class. So let's think about how we communicate. Concepts grasp the meaning of a thing, and they're expressed by words, terms, or symbols. We talk about this through definitions. So let's give an example. The students use the word catfishing. I'm going to be honest, I'm still not sure I fully grasped this, but here's a word I didn't know what it means. You told me, I looked it up online, and I grasped that concept, right? It took a little work, but I did it, right? So you can see it's a word, and it means something. But we put words together in judgments. And judgments are joined together with a subject term and a copula and a predicate term, right? Logic? Subject, copula, predicate. That's a judgment. But we're filling in subject and predicate with words. So catfishing is wrong. That's a judgment, right? And you can say, prove it. You're asking me to give more evidence. You're asking me to give you an argument when you say prove it. So judgments are sentences that are either true or false. So here's where sentences, words that we share with each other, are either true or false when they're not matters of taste. And the sentence is true if it matches reality. So here's the correspondence part. It's false if it doesn't match reality. And truth might be tied down, those are Socrates' words, with an account or a logos or an argument. This is how truth is verified by others. So verified, veritas, this is truth again. So if I say the words, catfishing is wrong, first you can say, what does that mean? And then you can say, is that true? It's wrong? And I could give you arguments why I think that's wrong. And then you can verify it. You can say, well, I think it's okay because of this. And then I could come back and say, no, but did you consider this? Until we reach some agreement. Now, maybe that's the part where you're like, I'm wondering if we could ever do that. Well, think about all the agreements we've reached in the past. I'm sure there's a lot if you consider it. Like people should sit and be quiet like you are doing in this very orderly way when a talk is being given. Who came up with that idea? We agreed to do it, right? Oh, but that's a social agreement. Hey, it's an agreement. And probably a lot of the words that I'm using right now, we've agreed upon the meaning of them. So I don't want you to give up on agreement yet. All right, one more thing about philosophy and truth, and this is one that's probably near and dear to your heart, and that's truth and justice. What's the relationship between truth and justice and social justice? If we want social justice, we must know and speak the truth about human nature and human society. This is super hard. Why? Because we disagree. We disagree about human nature, and we disagree about human society and how they should go. We disagree about equality, and we disagree over justice. What is justice? Now, this should not discourage us. This should be exciting. You know why? These are not yet settled matters, which means we get to engage in them. Ooh, it's worth arguing about. Social justice is worth arguing about. And I'm just going to reveal some of my biases right now. I disagree with Marx. I disagree with some of the Marxist views on social justice. It's worth arguing about. Why? Because I think there's assumptions, and the assumptions need to be proven. So human natures are merely material. Prove it. Human nature is determined by the environment. Prove it. Why do you think that? History is a necessary outworking that will result in an ideal society at the end. Why should I think that? Prove it. So this is exciting. Let's argue about these things. Now, Marx was important for one thing that we often fail to consider in philosophy, and that's praxis. What do we do with this? So we need to talk about truth and practice. What do we do with truth? Do we just sit around and talk like this? Or do we do something after this? Do I do something after this? So the question comes back that I asked at the beginning, why do we argue? Now I put this on Facebook. I like to start little bombs on Facebook and just like throw it out there and see what happens. Because I know who's going to come out and what they're going to say. But I got some surprising things, and maybe people are just being snarky, but it seemed like some people wanted to say we argue because it makes us feel smart or makes us feel powerful, or we like to put people down. I'm not sure that's the whole story. Maybe some people like that. That's not why I argue. It takes a lot of energy to argue, and I don't really get that much power. I mean, I get to be over here in the room. That's the power I get. I get to be over here and have a microphone, and you get to be over there. That's not much. I mean, I don't think they pay me a lot. You know, it's not like I have a lot of power in this world. So it can't be that for me. It's got to be something else. And I'm not super sure it's about smarts, because I was, a community college student. So no, I'm not saying that. We're all smart. Let's be honest. I didn't go to the big schools, Can't be that. I think we argue because we believe there is a truth of the matter about all things that are not matters of taste. And that's the stuff we argue about. And so I think we need to be careful to distinguish what's a matter of taste and what's a matter of truth. And until it's settled, let's keep arguing about the things that we think are true. Because I think we can make progress. Maybe that's my flaw. I'm idealistic in thinking we could make progress. No, I've looked at the history of philosophy and we have made progress. If you study history, you'll see that. And it's hopeful. So what is our moral obligation as thinkers? And humans are thinkers. What's our moral obligation? Here it is. I'm going to lay this out and you can disagree with me. First, we must not agree to disagree. Let's not do that, because that's just delaying the argument for other people to do. It's avoiding it. It's like saying, hey, we have this national debt. Let's just not do anything about it. And we leave it for the next generation, right? So we're just going to leave the problems for others if we agree to disagree. We must not fall into skepticism or fideism, because they're both saying nothing is clear. And I just don't think we could live with that. If we're honest, we can't live with that. It's not true. We must pursue the truth through challenges and responses with the goal of settling the matter for all and for the whole of our life. This is a big thing, but this is the requirement of true philosophers, I think. We must know and speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth for the whole of our lives, about everything. That's a faithful witness. That's integrity. If knowledge of the truth is our highest end, like I think it is, then we should not relent until we find the truth. Socrates called this care of the soul. This is where philosophy and the counseling division coincide. Care of the soul, right? Soul care. And it begins with know thyself. So first we should say, what do I think and why? And is it true? And that's the hard work. Self-examination is the hard work. And do I have an obligation to know the truth and speak the truth with others? If I expect it from them, do they expect it from me? All right, I want to leave you with one quote from a philosopher named Mortimer Adler. I was reading his book called 6 Great Ideas, and he ended the chapter on truth with this. However difficult and protracted the process of looking for truth may be, we must never tire of carrying it on. We must never suspend further inquiry as futile or discontinue argument as profitless. To do so is to abandon the pursuit of truth and to treat the matter in question as if it belonged to the sphere of taste. Only if we fully discharge all these obligations are we entitled to regard ourselves as engaging in a lifelong commitment to the pursuit of truth. So I ask you to join me in that great conversation in pursuit of the truth.